Good day everyone, we are the Group 3. Today we will discuss about the development of effective assessment tools. Before anything else, I would like to introduce to you my co-reporters. I'm with Mr. Mar Fernan Cayabyab, Ms. Froylin May Gara, Mr. Russell De Los Santos, Mr. Sergio Ortazo, and Mr. John Ray Getapal. Now, let's move on to the objective of our topic. After studying the development of effective assessment tools, students should learn the importance of measuring and understanding individual emotional and attitudinal responses. The role of affective assessment in providing insight into individuals' affective states such as emotions, attitude, and motivation. The significance of assessing non-cognitive skill and attribute, including empathy, resilience, and social awareness. The connection between affective assessment and the evaluation of individual, social, and emotional learning competencies. The value of using affective assessment tools to identify individual strengths and areas of growth in affective domain. And lastly, the contribution of affective assessment to a more comprehensive and holistic understanding of individuals' overall development and well-being. Okay, now let's move on to the next slide. According to Macmillan 2007, there are three feasible methods of assessing affective traits and dispositions. These methods are teacher observation, student self-report, and peer ratings. Since affective are not directly observable, they must be deducted from behavior or what students say about themselves and others. There are a variety of psychological measures that assess affective traits. But due to sophistication of such instrument, classroom teachers rarely use them. Instead, own observation and student self-reports are mostly used. There are three considerations in assessing affect. The first is emotions and feelings change quickly, most especially for young children and during early adolescence, which means that to obtain a valid indication of an individual student's emotion or feeling, it is necessary to conduct several assessments over a period of time. A single assessment is not enough to see what prevalent affect is. It needs to be repeated over several times. The second is use varied approaches in measuring the same affective traits as possible. It is better to rely on a single method because of limitation inherent in that method. For example, student self-report may be fake, hence may significantly middle in the result. However, it is the self-report are consistent with the teacher's observation, then the stronger case can be made. And the last is decide what type of data or result are needed. Is it individual or group data? Consideration of what the purpose of assessment is will influence the method that must be used. For reporting or giving feedback to parents or interested individuals about the learner, individual student information is necessary. Thus, multiple methods of collecting data over a period of time and keeping record to verify that judgment made is appropriate. If the assessment are to improve instruction, then the result for group or whole class is more proper to use. This is one of usefulness of affective assessment. It is reliable to use anonymous student self-report. Like I said a while ago, that there are three methods of assessing affective tool, which are the teacher observation, student self-report, and peer rating. So now, let me discuss the first method of assessing affective target, which is teacher observation, which is determine in advance and a specific behavior related to the targets, develop a list of positive and negative behavior, develop an observation schedule, decide the type of observation you want to use. Teacher observation is one of the essential tools for formative assessment. However, in this chapter, the emphasis is on how to use this method so that teachers can make more systematic observation to record students' behavior that indicates the presence of target affective traits. In using observation, the first thing to do is to determine the advance how specific behavior related to the target. It is start with a vivid definition of the traits, then followed by list of student behavior and action that correspond to positive and negative dimension of the traits. Behaviors and action are identified initially by listing the students with positive and negative behaviors do and say. Classify those and create a separate list of positive behavior and another list for negative behaviors. This list will serve as the initial or starting point of what will be observed. These are the example of student behavior indicating positive and negative towards learning. In positive, we have the rarely miss the class, while in the negative is frequently absent. Next in the positive list is rarely late to the class, while the negative is frequently tardy. Another positive behavior is work well independently without supervision, while on the negative behavior is need constant supervision. Next positive behavior is volunteer to help, while the negative is doesn't volunteer. Another positive behavior is completes homework, while the negative behavior is often does not complete homework. And last example for positive behavior is tries hard to well, while in negative behavior is doesn't care about bad grades. So these behaviors provide foundation in developing guidelines, checklist, or is rating scales. The positive behaviors are called approach behavior, while the negative ones are term avoidance behavior. Approach behavior result in direct, less frequent, and less intense contact. These dimensions are helpful in describing the behaviors that indicate positive and negative attitudes. This behavior may serves as a vital input on how to perform observation, particularly the teacher observation. Macmillan 2007 suggested that the best approach is to develop a list of positive and negative behaviors. Although published instruments are available, the unique characteristic of the school and its students are not considered in this instrument when they were developed. After the list of behavior has been developed, the teacher needs to decide whether to use an informal, unstructured observation or a formal one and structured. For unstructured observation. It may also be used for the purpose of making summative judgment. This is normally open-minded. No checklist or rating scale is used, and everything observed is just simply recorded. In using unstructured observation, it is necessary to have the list some guidelines and examples of behaviors that indicate affective traits. Thus, it is a must to determine in advance what to look for. However, it should not be limited to what was predetermined. It also needs to be open to include other action that may reflect on the trait. Unstructured observation is more realistic, which means teacher can record everything they have observed and or limited by what is contained in a checklist or rating scales. There is no problem if a specific behavior are not displayed and behavior that were not previously listed can added. The disadvantage is that it is not practical to record much about students' behavior on the regular basis. It is hard to find, most especially when teacher is preoccupied with other learning activities. Another is structured observation. Structured observation is different from unstructured observation in terms of preparation needed as well as in way observation is recorded. In structured observation, more time is needed since checklists or rating forms are to be made. Since it will be used to record observation, the form of generated from a list of positive and negative behaviors to make it easy and convenient in recording. And that is the part of my report. May I ask call the next reporter, Mr. Mar Fernan Cayabyab. Thank you.
So, good day everyone. So, dako na tayo sa continuation ng aming report. So, yung napunta sa akin is yung student self-report. So, student self-report is a form of assessment or evaluation in which students are asked to reflect on their own learning, behavior, or experience. It typically involves students providing feedback or information about their academic progress or personal development or specific areas of interest. This report can include self-assessment, self-reflection, or self-evaluation, and are often used by educators to gain insight into students' perspective, self-awareness, and areas for growth. The context of a student self-report can vary depending on the specific purpose and context, but it generally provides a means for students to communicate their thoughts, feelings, and understanding about their educational experience. So yung isang halimbawa ng self-report yung isang pagsusuri na kung saan hinihikayat yung mga mga mag-aaral na magbigay ng kanilang sariling pananaw tungkol sa kanilang pag-aaral o kaya yung personal na pag-unlad nila. So maaring isama rin ito sa ang kanilang mga layunin, mga karanasan sa pag-aaral, mga kahinaan tsaka yung kalakasan at kanilang mga plano para sa hinaharap. Ang ganitong uri ng report ay maaaring magbigay ng mahalagang impormasyon sa mga guro upang maunawaan ang mga pangailangan ng bawat mag-aaral at magamit ito upang mapabuti ang kanilang mga karanasan sa paaralan. Next naman po is yung student interview method. The student interview method is a qualitative research technique that involves conducting interviews with students to gather information, insight, and perspective about a specific topic or area of interest. It is a way to directly engage with student and gain in-depth understanding or of their thoughts, experience, and opinion. So yung student interview method naman ay isang paraan ng pananaliksik na kwalitatibo na kung saan sinasagawa yung mga interview sa mga mag-aaral upang kolektahin yung mga information nila. So yung isang magandang halimbawa dito, yung maaari rin silang magtanong tungkol sa mga paraan ng pagtuturo na nakatulong sa kanila at kung ano yung mga paraan ng pag-aaral na hindi nakatulong sa kanila. So maaari rin silang magtanong tungkol sa mga solusyon na kanilang ginamit upang malutas yung mga problema sa mathematics. Yan, isang halimbawa diyan yung sa mathematics. So sa pamamagitan ng mga interview sa mga mag-aaral, maaaring magkaroon ng mas malalim na pangunawa tungkol sa karanasan ng mga mag-aaral sa pag-aaral ng mathematics at maaaring magamit upang mapaunlad ang mga paraan ng pagtuturo o mga programa ng pag-aaral ng matematika. Next naman is yung questionnaire and survey method. Questionnaires and survey method are tools used in research to gather data from individuals regarding their opinion, behavior, and experience on a given topic. Questionnaires typically consist of a set of structured questions that respondents answer in a written format. These questions can cover a wide range of topics and are often designed to gather qualitative data, allowing for statistical analysis and generalization of finding to a larger population. So ang questionnaire at survey method ay mahalagang tool para sa pagkolekta ng mga data sa isang malawak na nasasakupan o yung saklaw. At karaniwan itong ginagamit sa panlipunang agham, pananaliksik sa merkado, tsaka pagsusuring opinyon ng publiko. Nagbibigay ito ng paraan upang sistematikong kolektahin ang mga data mula sa maraming mga respondent at maaaring magamit upang pag-aralan ang mga pananaw, kilos at mga pabor sa loob ng isang populasyon. So isang halimbawa ng questionnaire and survey method ay yung pagkolekta ng mga data tungkol sa pananaw ng mga mamimili sa isang bagong produkto sa merkado. So sa pagpapakilos na ito, maaaring magdisenyo ng isang hanay ng mga tanong upang masiguro na nakolekta ang mga impormasyon na kailangan upang maunawaan ang mga pananaw at saloobin ng mga mamimili tungkol sa bagong produkto. Next naman po is yung constructed response format. Constructed response format refers to a type of assessment item in which the respondent is required to provide a detailed and open-ended written or verbal response. This format is commonly used in educational setting to evaluate a person's comprehension, critical thinking, and problem solvings. So sa constructed response format naman, pinapakita naman sa respondent yung isang tanong o pangangailangan na nangangailangan ng kanilang buong at maayos na sagot. So yung sagot nila ay maaaring maglaman ng mga paliwanag, argumento, interpretation o solusyon sa mga problema. Ang format na ito ay nagbibigay daan sa mas malawakang demonstrasyon ng kaalaman at pangunawa kumpara sa multiple choice o true or false question. So, isa sa mga halimbawa ng constructed response format ay ang pagbibigay ng isang essay question sa mga mag-aaral. Sa ganitong format, 'di ba, binibigay sa mga mag-aaral ang isang malawak na tanong o paksa na kailangan nilang sagutin sa pamamagitan ng isang detalyadong sanaysay. Next naman is yung selected response format. The selected response format refers to a type of assessment item where the respondent is provided with a set of predefined option from which they must choose the correct or most appropriate response. This format is commonly used in educational evaluations and standardized tests to measure a person's knowledge, understanding, and ability to select the correct answer among the given choice. So, isa sa mga halimbawa ng selected response format ay ang pagbibigay ng multiple choice question sa mga mag-aaral. So, sa ganitong format, binibigay sa mga mag-aaral ang isang tanong at isang listahan ng mga pagpipilian at kinakailangan nilang piliin ang tamang sagot mula sa mga ibinigay na option. So, halimbawa dito yung maaring ibigay yung mga sumusunod na multiple choice question sa mga mag-aaral. So, ito yung tanong. Anong planeta ang pinakamalapit sa araw? A. Mars, B. Venus, C. Earth, D. Mercury. So, sa paggamit ng selected response format, ang mga mag-aaral ay hinahamon na pumili ng tamang sagot mula sa binigay na option. Sa kaso ng halimbawa na ibinigay, ang tamang sagot ay D, yung Mercury. So, ang format na ito ay nagbibigay ng mga option upang mapadali ang proseso ng pagsagot at pag-evaluate. Ito rin ay nagbibigay ng objektibong pamamaraan ng paggrado dahil ang mga tamang sagot ay natatakda ng maayos. Next naman po is yung peer ratings. Ratings refers to a type of evaluation where individuals are assessed by their peers or people who are in the same group or have similar roles. In a peering rating system, individuals provide feedback and evaluate the performance of their peer based on specific criteria or standards. So, isa sa mga halimbawa ng peer rating ay sa isang klase o grupo ng mga mag-aaral na mayroong project. So, sa ganitong sitwasyon, ang mga mag-aaral ay hinahamon na magbigay ng feedback at mag-evaluate ng performance ng kanilang mga kapwa mag-aaral sa pamamagitan ng pagbibigay ng marka o rating based sa ibinigay na criteria. So, halimbawang maaaring ibigay ang mga sumusunod na criteria sa mga mag-aaral na magbigay ng peer rating para sa proyekto ng kanilang grupo. So, parang ganito siya. So, yung number 1 is yung contribution sa project is 30%. So, kakayahang magtrabaho sa grupo at makipag-ugnayan sa ibang kasapi yung 25%. Number 3 naman is yung kalidad ng output o resulta ng project, 30%. Tapos yung ika-4 naman, yung panghuli, yung professionalism at pagiging responsable sa paghahanda at pagpapasa ng proyekto na 15% na binubuo ng 100%. Next naman is yung guess who approach. The guess who approach is a problem-solving strategy that involves narrowing down possible option to identify a correct answer or solution. It can be used in various contexts such as in solving puzzle, guessing games, or even in specific research. For example, in the game Guess Who each player has a board with pictures of different people and they must guess the other player's chosen person by asking yes or no question. So dito naman dito magsisimula yung mga manlalaro sa pangkalatang katanungan na magpapabawas ng malawak na possibility. So yung halimbawa, yung maaring itanong ng manlalaro kung ang bagay o pangalan na nasa isip ng kabilang manlalaro ay isang tao, hayop o bagay upang ma-eliminate ang ibang possibility. So sa pamamagitan din ng guess who approach, maaari nating masiguro ang tamang sagot sa pamamagitan ng proseso ng pag-eliminate ng mga posibilidad hanggang matagpuan yung tamang sagot. Next naman is yung sociometric approach. The sociometric approach is a research method used to study social relationship among individuals with a group. It involves collecting data on people's social connection, preference, and interaction, and analyzing the resulting pattern to gain insight into social dynamics. Overall, the sociometric approach is a useful tool for understanding social relationship and dynamics within a group, and can be applied in various contexts to improve social interactions and relationship among group member. So isang halimbawa ng sociometric approach yung pagsasagawa ng isang survey sa isang klase upang malaman yung mga social connection at preference ng bawat mag-aaral sa kanilang mga kapwa mag-aaral. So para sa halimbawa na ito, isipin natin na may isang klase na may 30 na mag-aaral sa sociometric approach. Ang bawat mag-aaral ay bibigyan ng isang listahan ng pangalan ng kanilang mga kapwa mag-aaral sa klase at hihilingan nila ito na pumili sila ng ilang kaibigan o mga tanong na malapit sa kanila. Maaring magkaroon ng mga kategorya tulad ng pinakamalapit na kaibigan, kaibigan at hindi kakilala. So pagkatapos ng survey, ang mga datos ay maaring i-analyze gamit ang mga statistic technique tulad ng social network analysis. Ito ay isang paraan ng pag-aaral na nagbibigay diin sa mga connection at ugnayan ng mga individual sa isang grupo. Maaring malaman kung sino ang mga popular na mag-aaral kung mayroong mga grupo o mga kaklik sa klase o kung mayroong mga mag-aaral na hindi gaano aktibo o na-isolate. Next naman is yung utilizing the different method or combinations of method in assessment effect. Utilizing different method or combinations of method in assessment can have several effects on the assessment process and the outcomes. Here are some of the effects. Number 1 is yung comprehensive understanding. Employing a variety of assessment method allow for a more comprehensive understanding of the learner's ability, knowledge, and skill. It provides a more holistic view of their performance as different method may capture different aspect of their learning. Next naman dito, number 2, yung reduce bias. Using a single assessment method can introduce bias based on the individual preference or strength of the learner. Employing multiple methods help mitigate the impact of bias by providing a more balanced and fair evaluation. Number 3, diverse skills. Different assessment methods cater to diverse skill and learning style. By utilizing a range of methods such as written test, oral presentation, practical demonstration, and projects, educators can better assess a learning abilities across various domains. Next naman dito, number 4, yung rich feedback. Multiple assessment method offer the opportunity for diverse and rich feedback. Learners can receive feedback on different aspects of their performance, helping them understand their strengths and areas needed improvement. Number 5, validity and reliability. Using a combination of assessment method can enhance the validity and reliability of the assessment. It helps ensure that the assessment accurately measures what it intends to measure and is consistent over time. Number 6, engagement and motivation. Various assessment method can engage learner through different activities which can enhance motivation and interest in the learning process. This can lead to a more positive learning experience. So number 7, tailored assessment. Different learners may perform better in different assessment format. Using a variety of method allows for a more tailored approach to assessment, accommodating the individual needs and preference of learners. So in conclusion, employing different methods or combinations of methods in assessment can lead to a more comprehensive, fair, and engaging assessment process, providing a more accurate representation of learners' abilities and enhancing their learning experience. So dito po nagtatapos yung aking report. Next reporter po. Thank you po.
So, good day. I am the next reporter and I am Frailin Mayigara from BPA 2A. So, continue the discussion. Let's have utilizing the different methods or combination of methods in assessing affect. So, is the term method, namely observation or self-report and peer ratings. that was discussed previously has its own advantage and disadvantage, and choosing for which method to use, we need to consider the following factor. And the first factor to consider is type of effect that needs to be assessed. The type of effect that needs to be addressed. A general reaction to something or someone can best be gathered through observation. However, if an attitude components is to be diagnosed, a self-report will give a better information. Observation can be supported by peer ratings in the target, socially oriented affect. So the type of effect that needs to be addressed can vary depending on the situation and the individual. One way to gather information about someone's general effect is through observation. And by observing their behavior, facial expression, and body language, we can get a sense of their overall mood and emotional state. Um, However, if he want to specifically diagnose someone's attitudes or the components of their affect, a self-report can provide better information. This involves directly asking the person about their feelings, thoughts, and attitudes. Self-report can be in the form of questionnaire, interview, survey, and by allowing individuals to reflect on their own experience and provide self-assessment, and we can gain insight into their internal emotional states. Observation can be supported by peer ratings, and especially when the target affect is socially oriented. In someone case, individuals may not be fully aware of their own affect or may have biases in self-reporting, and peer ratings involves collecting feedback from other who interact with the who interact with the person and regularly, such as friends or family members or colleges, and their observation and assessment can provide additional perspective and help validate or supplement the information gathered through self-reporting. For example, the observation, and you notice that your friend has been displaying signs of sadness, such as slumped shoulders and a downcast gaze and a lack of enthusiasm and in their voice. And based on this observation, you gather that their general affect is low. The second example is a self-report, and you ask your coworker to complete a questionnaire about their job satisfaction, and they provide responses indicating that they feel frustrated and um unfulfilled and dissatisfied with their work, and their self-report provides insights into their specific attitudes and affect related to their job. And the last one example is peer ratings. In a classroom settings, a teacher may ask student to rate their classmates of level of friendliness, and by collecting by peer ratings, the teachers can gather information about each student's socially oriented affect and identify individuals who may need support or intervention in developing positive social relationship. And the second factor is if the information needed is from group or individual responses. If group response and tendencies are needed, selected response self-report method is suited because it assures anonymity and is easily scored. If the information needed is from group or individual responses, the choice between using a group or response or an individual response depends on the specific goals of the assessment. And when tendencies or general patterns are needed, and a group response is often more suitable, and this involves collecting responses and from a larger sample of individuals and analyzing the data as a whole. Group responses allow for the identification of trends, patterns, and overall tendencies within the group. And this method can be particularly useful when studying and population level attitudes and preference or behaviors. And one common way to collect group responses is through selected response method. Such as survey or questionnaires. These methods typically provide as a set of predetermined response or option for participants to choose from. Selected response methods are advantage and because they are standardized and easily quantifiable and allow for efficient and data analysis. They also assure anonymity, which can encourage participants to provide honest response.
Good day everyone, I'm Russell De Los Santos for the continuation of our report, and today I will discuss the use of information. So ano nga ba yung use of information? If the intention of the affective assessment is to utilize the result as supporting input to grading, then multiple approaches is necessary. So, if your purpose is to support input of your grading, as a teacher, it is important to use multiple approaches or methods in assessing the students. So, sa ganitong paraan is masisiguro mo or may ensure mo na pantay-pantay or patas yung pagbibigay mo ng grade sa iyong mga students, and be mindful of possibility na having a fake result from self-report and even from peer judgment. So, the use of informations plays as a crucial role in development of effective assessment tools. So, this information is kabilang dito yung data on human emotions, behaviors, and physiological responses. And additionally, kasama din dito yung tinatawag natin na knowledge of cognitive and neural system na sumasalamin sa emotions and behavior. So, for another insight lang, yung neural system, it refers or tumutukoy siya sa complex network of cells in the nervous system na responsible sa pagpapadala ng or pagbabahagi ng mga signals or information sa ating buong katawan. So overall, the use of information is essential or important to the development of effective assessment tools na maaaring mag-provide ng valuable insight into an individual's emotional states and behaviors. So, the next is affective assessment tool. So, ano nga ba yung affective assessment tool? An affective assessment tool in the development of affective assessment tool is a method or instrument na ginagamit to evaluate the effectiveness, accuracy, or reliability of a new effective assessment tool. So, this tool is designed para ma-measure yung various aspect of new tools performance, such as its validity, reliability, and sensitivity. And the affective domain encompasses behavior, or sumasaklaw siya sa behaviors in terms of attitudes, beliefs, and feelings. And there are various assessment tools used to measure affect. First is checklist, second is Likert scale, semantic difference scale, and the lastly is sentence completion. So this is the end of my part for our report, and may I call my co-reporters for the continuation of our report. And muli, I'm Russell De Los Santos, and thank you po.
So, my name is Sergio Hurtazo, and I'll be discussing the parts of effective assessment tools, which are the checklist and Likert scale. So, let us go to checklist. So, based on Burke 2009, checklist is one of the effective formative assessment strategies to monitor specific skills, behavior, or disposition of individual or group of students. So, ginagamit ang checklist to make observation and record their skills, criteria, or behavior. So, prior to final and summative evaluation. So, also, it provides information to teachers if there are students who need help so as to avoid failing. So, kumbaga, pwedeng ginagamit yung checklist sa pagsasurvey, ganon. So, kumbaga, yung checklist is dalawang column yung ginagamit, which is yung yes or no. So, ipapakita ko yung sample dito sa taas, yung example ng papel ng checklist. So, tayong dalawang pumapasok sa checklist, which is the numerical rating scale and the descriptive graphic rating scale. So, sa numerical rating scale is a number rating scale translate the judgment of quality or degree into numbers to increase the objectivity and consistency of result from numerical scale. A short verbal description of the quality level of each number may be provided. So, sa numerical rating scale, ginagamit niya dito is yung pagna-numbering, which is the pwedeng 0 to 4 or 1 to 5. So, kumbaga, basta from the word itself, check. Kumbaga, i-check natin yung kung ano ba nga ba yung isasagutan natin kapag tayo ay may sinasagutan na survey or may pinapasagot sa atin. So, sa sa descriptive graphic rating scale, dito sa descriptive graphic rating scale is dito papasok yung agree, disagree, neutral, or don't agree, never agree, ganon, slightly agree. Yun yung example ng descriptive graphic rating scale. So, descriptive graphic rating scales is a better format for rating. Is this descriptive graphic rating scale that replaces ambiguous single word, no? So, with a short behavioral descriptions of the various point along the scale. So, kumbaga, dinidescribe dito yung point ng scale by behavior of the students. So, description leads to increased consistency of rating across raters, no? So meron tayong mga common error scale. So the first one is leniency error, which is occur when a teacher tends to make almost all ratings towards the high end of the scale, avoiding to low end of the scale. Kumbaga dito is nangyayari yung leniency error is kumbaga kapag yung rating niya is towards sa puro mga pataas, halimbawa sa sabihin natin sa descriptive graphic rating scales. So, kumbaga, yung choices niya is more on sa agree, ganon. Or kapag sinabi naman sa numerical rating scale, kumbaga yung sa number, minsan kasi yung number 5 is nag-stand as parang very good or more on yes. Yes, yung ano niya, sagot. So, the next one is the severity error. So, dito naman sa severity error, a teacher tends to make almost ratings toward the low end of the scale. Kumbaga ito yung opposite ng leniency error, no? So, sa severity error naman, kumbaga most likely yung ratings niya is towards sa low end of the scale, no? Hindi kagaya sa leniency error na puro sa high rating scale. So the next one naman is the central tendency error. So it occurs when a teacher hesitates to use extremes and uses only a middle part of the scale. So, kumbaga dito sa central tendency error is more on nasa gitna yung yung ratings niya, no? So in halo effect, ang nangyayari dito is yung naapektuhan ng teacher, yung mga student, kumbaga nahawa niya sa characteristic niya. So, maybe mapang negative man o positive, no? So, the next one is the personal bias. So, personal bias occurs when a teacher has a general tendency to use inappropriate or irrelevant favoring boys over girls, from rich family over from middle income family, etc. So, from the word itself, the personal bias, no? Kumbaga nagiging bias yung teacher dito, no? Meron papasok dito na pag-stereotyping sa mga students niya. So, the next one naman is the logical error. So, logical error occurs when a teacher gives similar rating to two or more dimensions that the teacher believes to be related, or in fact they are not related at all. Kumbaga dito sa logical error is binibigyan mo yung estudyante, halimbawa sa dalawa, kumbaga may pagka-similarity sila, pero tapos bibigyan mo siya ng ratings na parang isa lang yung dimensions niya, no? So without knowing na hindi naman sila related at all, tapos magkaiba sila ng gusto, ganun. So the next one is the rater drift. So occurs when the raters whose ratings originally agreed begin to redefine the rubrics for themselves. So sa rater drift naman, yung rating nila dito is nag-agree, tapos kumbaga iniba nila yung rubrics nila para sa sarili nila. Halimbawa is yung isang tanong doon is konektado sa'yo, pero yung isasagot mo is malayo kung redefine mo yung sarili mo. So, dadako naman tayo sa Likert scale, which is 5-point scale, no? So, kagaya lang siya ng descriptive graphic rating scale. So, ang mangyayari sa Likert scale is mahati siya sa 5. So, strongly agree or SA, agree, which stands for A, and undecided sa U, and disagree sa D, and strongly disagree as SD. So, this is an example of the Likert scale, no? So, as you can see, yung 1 to 5 is firstly strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, and strongly agree. So, paano nga ba natin makukuha yung numerical ng bawat number? So first na gagawin natin is yung range. So kukunin natin yung pinaka highest value, which is number 5. sa strongly disagree, and sa pinaka lowest naman is 1. So yung gagawin natin is i-minus natin, no? So 5 minus 4 is equals to 5 minus 1 is equals to 4. So yung magiging interval niya is 4 divided by 5. So yung 5 is yung strongly agree hanggang sa strongly disagree. So yung kakalabasan niya is 0.8. So kapag 0.8 na yun is gagamitin natin yung mag-add tayo ng 2 decimal point. So magiging 0.80 siya. So yung paano natin makukuha yung 1.00 hanggang sa 1.80. So yung 1.00 is sa number 1 strongly agree. And paano natin makukuha yung upper limit niya is simply by pag-add natin yung 1.00 plus 0.80. So magiging 1.80 siya. So ang mangyayari sa number 2 naman sa agree, so yung lowest limit niya is magiging 1.81. So in order for us to get the 2.60, ang gagawin natin is 1.80 plus 0.80. So magiging 260 siya. So sa neutral is kukunin natin yung lowest limit, which is the 2.61, and in order for us to get the 3.40 is 2.60 plus 0.80. So ganun lang yun hanggang sa repeated hanggang sa mapunta sa dulo. So tatandaan nyo lang kung anong upper limit ng, for example, number 2 is mag-add kayo ng isa para maging lower limit sa number 3. So here's the example, no? So may respondents tayo ng 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So sa question number 1, so ganyan ang mangyayari. Ipag-add natin sila and i-divide sa 7. So yung kinalabasan niya is 3.29. Ibig sabihin, papasok siya sa neutral, no? So sa question number 2 naman is total niya is 3.71 na divide na sa 7. So yung mangyayari sa kanya is disagree sa question number 2. Kasi 3.71 siya, which is papasok siya sa disagree na 3.41 to 4.20. So sa question number 3 naman is 3.00 yung kanyang total. So papasok siya sa neutral, no? So question number 4 naman is 2.00, no? So papasok naman yung question number 4 sa agree. So yun lang po yung example ng Likert scale.
So, good day everyone. So, for the continuation, my name is John Ray Bigitapal. So, my topic is all about semantic difference scale. Semantic difference scale is used to measure the meaning of things and concepts. So, tries to assess an individual's reaction to specific words, ideas, or concept, and then in terms of rating on bipolar scales, defined with contrasting adjective and to each end. So, for example, yung good and bad. So, contrasting. The position mark 0 is labeled neutral. The one position are labeled slightly. So, the two positions quite, and the three position is extremely. So, that is semantic difference scale. So, semantic difference scale is a type of rating scale used in surveys and research to measure the connotative meaning of object, events, or concept. So when we say semantic difference scale, it is used in surveys like sa mga questionnaires, sa mga nagre-rating, or sa mga evaluation. So it is typically present a series of bipolar. So ano nga ba yung bipolar scale? So para din siyang semantic, pero yung bipolar, siya yung evaluation. Halimbawa, light and heavy, small ground, and para siyang pinagko-contrast. And yung sa gitna is neutral. Ibig sabihin, neutral ka, wala kang pinapanigan. So that is semantic different. So another example yung such good and bad, happy and sad, strong and weak, and respondents indicate their position on a continuum between the two poles. So usually mga ginagamit na mga poles na yan yung mga pagpipilian ng mga magko-conduct ng surveys or sa mga evaluations from 5, halimbawa from 3 to 0 and from 0 to 3. So this is skills used to capture the halimbawa yung mga attitudes or feelings other than being contrast towards a particular subject and provides more detailed and informing than a simple rating scale. So, for the summary for short, semantic difference scale use yung both poles o yung pag-rate. So, the best na example sa evaluation, sa mga halimbawa, pag mag-evaluate ka ng mga teachers natin, halimbawa, magko-conduct ka ng surveys or questionnaires, yan yung mga ginagamit kadalasan ng mga researchers. Yan yung semantic difference scales na tinatawag. So, another one is sentence completion. So, what is sentence completion? So, this is a test that skills to use the information observed in complex then to incomplete sentences in order to correctly complete them. So, sentence completion exercise have the advantage of decreasing any tendency to lead or bias the student's responses. So, for example, I wish I could be. So, I think the Filipino is a subject is I like my Filipino teacher the most because I felt happy when. So, this is the example of sentence completion. So, you need to to complete or to respond any given sentences. Another sites about sentence completion is sentence completion concept often used to psychological assessment. So, psychological assessment and therapy where individuals asked to finish or a given sentence with their own words. So, bahala ka na magsagot sa sentence completion. Halimbawa, binigay sa'yo, I wish I could be. So, dadagdagan mo siya ng naaayon sa sentence o sa own words mo. That is sentence completion. Dapat tapat yung pagsasagot mo. So, this technique can provide insights or a person. So, halimbawa yung thought patterns, feelings, and attitude. So, and it used to help understand their perspective and emotions in a specific topic. So, dito mo nilalabas yung saloobin mo sa sentence completion para ang gumagawa ng sentence na naayon lang sa'yo. So, ikaw na bahala magdadagdag or mag-construct ng sentences mo or sentence. So, that's all for my report. So, thank you very much and have a good day.